I'm going to give you some tips to help plan a staycation. Hello, my name is Rob. I'm a tour guide and the founder of Trip Hacks DC Tours. On this channel, you will find my best tips, tricks, and hacks for exploring Washington, DC. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification icon so that you don't miss anything in the future. 2020 is not the year for travel and tourism, but it's going to be a long time before things are back to the way they used to be pre-COVID. Staycations are actually really great for a lot of reasons. They're usually cheaper, they're closer to home, you don't have to spend a lot of money or time getting there. Now my tips will apply to a staycation just about anywhere, but obviously I'm going to use examples from right here in Washington, DC. So after you're done watching the video, leave a comment and let everyone know if you're thinking of taking a staycation this year and where you're gonna do it. And of course, there is no right or wrong way to do a staycation. These are just going to be some of my own personal suggestions based on a few staycations that I've taken in previous years. So with that said, let's get started. My first tip for doing a staycation is to budget it like you're taking a vacation. One of the best things about going on vacation is that we tend to save up for it in advance and then have a lot more flexibility when it comes to budget, which means splurging on some things that we might not otherwise treat ourselves to in regular life. So make a list of how much you're willing to spend on meals, activities, and transportation for getting around. One of the best things about being on vacation to me is getting to try a whole bunch of new foods and restaurants and not having to worry about groceries or cooking. If you haven't seen it yet, I did make a video about how to find the best restaurants in a city like DC, so go ahead and check out the description for a link to that. I bet that wherever you live, there are some restaurants in town that you haven't tried but have always wanted to. So start writing them down. That's a really easy and great place to start. Here in DC, I might refer you to the Washingtonians 100 Very Best Restaurants Guide. And most importantly, when you do find some that you want to try, make sure to make a reservation if it's required. So if it's a place, for example, that's only doing outdoor dining, you'll want to make sure that you can get a table. My next staycation tip is to get yourself into vacation mode. If it's possible, see if you can take a day or two off of work and do your staycation on those days. To me, this helps to simulate what a real vacation would be like, where you would typically take a few days off. This is especially true if you work a 9-to-5 office job, because weekdays tend to have a very different feel than weekend days. I know it's a little difficult to describe exactly how places feel different on weekdays than on weekends, but this is definitely a real phenomenon. Whether you take an extra vacation day or just do your staycation on a day you already had off, the most important thing is you need to disconnect from work, which means no work email, no Slack, and just completely disconnect from anything related to the office. Now, when it comes to activities, my next tip is to make a list of all the fun things that there are to do in your city. This could include things that you really like to do, but just don't get to do that often. For me, I really like driving ranges. I'm not a golfer, and I really don't go very often, but this would be a great activity that I could add to my own staycation. You can include things on the list that you've always wanted to do, but for whatever reason just never made the time. Or because you made the excuse that there's always next weekend. I can always do it another time. Make sure to include some things that you've never done because they're quote unquote the touristy things to do. A lot of times we write off these activities as things that locals simply don't do. But that doesn't mean that they aren't fun or worth trying at least once. I mean, how do you know they're not worth doing if you've never tried it? For example, participants on Trip Hacks DC tours are overwhelmingly from out of town. But every once in a while, we get a local who's curious and signs up. And generally, the reaction is, wow, that was a lot of fun, and I wish I'd done it sooner. But since tours are generally tagged as a tourist thing to do, it just wasn't on their radar. And a staycation is a great chance to change that. And a bonus tip is that if you can swing it, book a hotel, get a pet sitter, and generally try to avoid all the little chores that are part of daily life. It's a lot more fun on your staycation when you don't have to watch the clock and then rush home because Rover needs his evening walk. I know, a lot of people shy away from staying at a hotel because they figure, why spend this money? I'm already paying rent or a mortgage in this city. And honestly, it's hard to disagree with that. But in 2020, now that a lot of people, especially who work in offices, are switching to work from home, it's becoming even more difficult to separate the office from home. And since you stuck around with me this far, let me tell you about my super secret bonus hack. It doesn't always work, but when it does, it's a good one. Once you find a hotel that you like, call them up on the phone and ask if they have a locals rate or a neighbors rate. A lot of times these are not advertised, you can't book them online, and if you call the general 1-800 number, they won't tell you about them either. I know that hotels in my own neighborhood offer these, mostly unadvertised and typically on very slow dates. And hey, the worst that they can say is no. Staying at a hotel is also great because you can pick one that's close to the things you want to do and not have to stress about commuting. And hey, if you made it this far, then I highly recommend another Trip Hacks DC video. So go ahead and click or tap right over here to watch the next one. And if you are going to do your staycation in DC and want to sign up for a Trip Hacks DC guided tour, you can click or tap on the Capitol Dome on the left side of my head. That'll send you right over to triphacksdc.com where you can see all of the tours that we offer. Enjoy your staycation!